Start.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the Catalyzing Change Conversation series. And what a stellar panel we have. Before I start, my background reflects the festive spirit of Navratri. So happy Navratri to everyone. And thank you so much for joining. For those in India at 5 p.m. India time, I understand that during the festive season, it's really tough to take time out, but we have more than 70 attendees. Warm welcome to all of you. I'm Anshu Taneja. I'm Managing Director for Vision Spring, and I'm glad to be hosting this panel discussion today on behalf of Catalyst 2030. As most of you know, Catalyst 2030 is a global movement trying to catalyze achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. It's a network bringing together government, businesses, corporates, civil society organizations, all trying to make robust, innovative strategies and ensuring that we get to the achievement of SDGs as soon as we can. Our session today is all about funding for social change. Funding for social change, transactional or strategic. It's a very interesting topic. And it's a debate that's going on in the corporate world, in the civil society, on what exactly is the funding that's coming for social change doing, and how it's creating an impact, and how could we really use it to exponentially grow the impact and make it more strategic and not localized and not focused on specific projects, but how can we change the ecosystem through it? How can we involve different stakeholders, and how we can set about to make a difference bigger than what we had thought. Let me quickly introduce our panelists today. I start with Dr. Shelly Batra. Shelly, as you know, is the CEO of Every Infant Matters. She's a leading authority, and in this panel today, she is the voice of the civil society. And you could read Shelly's detailed profile on the chat. We have with us also Swaminathan Ramanathan, who is heading the Social Impact Consulting Division at Deloitte. He brings in his perspectives dealing with both the corporate sector as well as the social organizations, and has very interesting perspective on what's going in the world of funding. We also have Mr. Tejinder Singh. Mr. Singh is the founder and owner of Fine Painting LLC. He's based out of the US. Thanks for joining so early in the morning. And Mr. Singh also runs the Touch of Color Foundation, which is making significant social impact in India, particularly in Punjab. We also have with us Vivek Prakash. Vivek is a legend in the field of CSR, having spent more than 25 years, first with Ambuja Group and now with the Jubilant Bharti Group. Welcome, Vivek, to the discussion. Brings in a lot of relevant corporate perspective. And then finally, we have Urvashi. Urvashi joins us from Niti Aayog. She's the director of the monitoring and evaluation wing at Niti, and would be sharing the point of view of the government of India as we look to discuss this important subject. We'll hear from our panelists first, and then we have special guests in Uni Krishnan from Great Eastern Shipping. We have Deep Jyoti from Farm to Food Foundation, and Malvika from Sagana. And once we hear from the experts, we will open up the house to Q&A. So please be ready with your questions and keep posting them on the chat. Our idea is to set the context and then make the session as interactive as we can. So I'll start with you, Dr. Shelly Batra. Please set the context for us. When we say strategic funding, transactional funding, what do we mean with it? So, give your perspective on how you see these words, how you see these terms, as it'll help us all be on the same page as we start this important discussion. Over to you.
Thank you very much for having invited me, Anshu. This is a very important conversation, and these are matters of great moment because we are going beyond doing small projects to bringing about a systems change. And that is what the difference in the two types of funding is all about. Transactional funding is funding from a donor. You implement this project, you distribute food, you open up schools or whatever. It is very simple. Now, what is strategic funding? If you have fever, you don't just give paracetamol. You find out, is it malaria? Is it tuberculosis? Is it cholera? Is it typhoid? You diagnose the root cause. And if it is cholera, is there a waterborne epidemic going on? Find all the factors responsible and address those issues. And that is what strategic funding is all about. That you find what you have to do in order to address the problem in a holistic manner. So funding in strategic funding comes not just with funding, it's a whole package, a package of financial advice, strategic advice, a systems change approach, and a lot of advice on governance and other issues that NGOs need. Now, I'm a surgeon. I may be very good at cutting up people. I've done it for 3 decades. But what are the other issues in which the corporates can help with best business practices as applied to the NGO sector? So when all of this comes together with the funding, that I think is what a strategic funding is all about. Let me give a small example of a strategic approach, I should say, not strategic funding, a strategic approach to a problem. Just after independence, there was a lot of incidents of goiter, the swelling in the neck and hypothyroidism in the foothills of the Himalayas. There was terrible iodine deficiency. We don't see those cases anymore. One very big corporate house addressed it alone, the Tatas. They put iodine in the salt and they made a slogan, Namak hai Tata, Tata Namak. So not only did they find the technical solution, they mobilized communities to accept the solution. They worked with the governments to push the solution. And that is what a systems change is all about.
Thank you, Dr. Shelly. I'll pass on to Swami. Swami, first of all, what's been your experience? Transactional versus strategic? Is the narrative shifting? If yes, how? If no, why not? And do you also see COVID playing any role in making any change or any difference to how we perceive funding?
First of all, thanks, Anshu, for having me here. I think we've been having these kind of conversations quite a lot within Vision Spring and even within the work that we do with Deloitte and with Vision Spring together. To answer your question in terms of transactional and strategic, I think both are important and both have their own place. But if one has to go ahead and look at the nature of strategic funding, I think the nature of strategic funding is not has evolved from going ahead and looking at an end-to-end solution to a solution that goes ahead and helps either augment the capacity or amplify the impact of a certain set of activities that are already taking place. So in that sense, strategic funding is more towards going ahead and contributing to system change rather than going ahead and actually attributing the entire system change to one set of initiatives. To give a very specific example, Anshu, the kind of work Vision Spring is doing in terms of going ahead and providing accessible and affordable eye care services to vulnerable and marginalized communities. It's one form of system change where a lot of the pieces of that particular change are already being carried out by different kinds of government institutions, philanthropic organizations, state governments, specific missions, etc. What Vision Spring is bringing to the table, for instance, in terms of providing accessible and affordable eye care services using technology, using 3D printing, creating a certain kind of social enterprise driven business model, is a strategic change that requires a strategic form of funding, wherein the investment is for a particular way or an approach or a model which amplifies the impact of the other institutions, which goes ahead and fills a specific gap that is already available. So that's one part of how the nature of strategic funding itself has changed. Transactional funding, or at least in the way I have seen the funding model work, is to go ahead and actually take care of immediate requirements. It could be something that comes from disaster. It could be something that comes from extreme poverty and extreme hunger. It could be something that comes from going ahead and providing basic services without which self-respect and dignity of human beings cannot be kept together. So transactional funding is for immediate requirements. I'll sort of wrap it all up by going ahead and saying that strategic funding, one key aspect of strategic funding is also to go ahead and identify institutions and organizations where their capacity to administratively deliver something or scale a particular service is also strategic funding, where the funding may not be earmarked for the specific skill set or the capacity that they are able to bring to the table because they've developed that over a period of time. But how do you help a particular organization scale it up so that it's not just a proof of concept or it's confined to a particular area, but it's something that is able to go ahead and transcend boundaries and go national?
Thank you, Swami. Great points there. I bring in a very different perspective. Mr. Singh, please give your perspective as an entrepreneur as you look to fund projects and programs. How are you using philanthropic funding as a vehicle to catalyze social impact? And how do you decide which organization or cause to support?
Good evening, everyone. I'm in USA, and thanks, Anshu, for having me on. I grew up as an entrepreneur in New York, New Jersey, and as I retired, I wanted to do something big in life. We've touched people in USA, but it's on a small scale. So we wanted to do something where we could touch millions of people. So we started out, a friend of mine, Rahul Saxena, is on the board of Vision Spring. He introduced me to Vision Spring, and with the help of Anshu, we started with a small camp in Amritsar and my ancestral village in Lasara, which is close to Ludhiana, where I hadn't been in the last 10 years. So we set up an eye camp with a goal of just covering 3,000 eyeglasses to be distributed. So that's the transactional funding, what they call. Okay, this is a goal. Let's try it out, see what happens. And I went there with my family and brothers, sisters. We were all there, and we were so touched with the love and affection which we found in India. And we were going to go sell my grandfather's house, and the love we found from the villagers just touched the heart. And we said, no, we cannot abandon our roots. So that thing. And also what we found is that in the village, there were more than 50-60% of the villagers had never had their eyes tested. So there was such a difference between a city and a village, because we are from a small village, it's a population of about 4,000 people. So that's where when I came back, and it really started out as a one point event. But then when we came back here, I started thinking, discussion with Mr. Rahul, and we somehow the idea of Clear Vision Punjab evolved, and we started thinking big. I said, look, he said, oh, how about a clear vision, a goal of having everybody reflective error free in Punjab? I said, but that's a big population. How are we going to fund all that? So then how do we, this is what we want to do. The goal was set big. I said, look, I want to touch 1 million, I want to give out 1 million eyeglasses in my lifetime. So then we started working on the project, and before you know, we had designed a project for 10 years. I committed with Vision Spring a 10-year project that we will do the funding, but it was still not enough. So where it became strategic was that Vision Spring said that they'll leverage this. So we became the seed, we became the incubator in Punjab that, hey, we want to make everybody, reflective error free. And Vision Spring, just in the first year, they went to the other donors, Shell and a couple of other big corporates who they service, and they all pitched in. So from the first year, our commitment was only 15,000 eyeglasses, and we became 60,000 eyeglasses we distributed in the first year. So then COVID happened, and so we were set back 2 years. So now we are back on. But just thinking big and there are solutions, and then we got the other partners. So now the government is involved. Vision Spring is working very actively with the government. So I think to all the entrepreneurs out there, I think the lesson I learned is that think big. And when you think big, something will happen. Look, we find resources, we find effort, but when you think small, that's all you are stuck with. So that's how when I came to America, I became successful because I said, hey, I'm in a big country, I'm going to make it happen. So to all the people out there, just go out there and think big, and then we can make a change. And then I think we are making a change in Punjab. By now, this is social impact, what you call. That's what I think we are going with from a small 3,000 eye camp to now we are touching millions. So our goal is that in 10 years, every rural, and especially all the small villages everybody will have their eyes checked on a regular basis.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Great and inspirational. Let's take a very different perspective. Vivek, if I can invite you to share your experience, being in corporates for so long, what shifts are you seeing? Personally, even at Jubilee and Bhartiya, you've been in the boardroom discussing and deciding on CSR strategies for years now. So what are the kind of changes you're experiencing? And if not, again, why not? And if yes, why? And what's triggered those changes? I think it's also important for everyone to know if there are changes happening, what's triggering those.
Thank you, Anshu. So it's a very good panel where we are able to learn the perspective of and social entrepreneur like Dr. Sally Batra, then expert from Deloitte. So they are doing consultancy for many corporates and many social enterprises also. At the same time, we heard with one philanthropist who is doing so thinking big and creating a lot of impact also. But at the same time, my perspective is little different because I'm from corporate side, and I'm giving you, maybe someone will agree or not, but this is also a perspective of a corporate sector. So there are two, and especially CSR sector. I'm not telling about entire corporate. So like Sally explained about the Tata initiative, that is not CSR, that is their business. And they do business with strategy and use social cause also for the business. So I'm giving, I will start with one example. So, or one, just a case. So let us consider a manufacturing and mining industry and another is service sector industry. Let us consider one mining company is running a lot of project in the community surrounding to their mines and education, health and livelihood. Any day accident can happen, and one day one accident happened, and because accident company don't want to do any accident, but it happens, sometimes happens, and then suddenly this entire community came and they closed the mines, closed the plant. Now tell me whether the CSR investment, whether they were doing that is transactional or that is strategic. If company is able to establish the dialogue with the local community and convince them that this is an accident, we are looking to it, and certainly we will try to avoid such situation in future. And if that CSR investment or agency which is working there for any project, I'm not saying education, health or livelihood, any project, if that agency or that project people are able to establish that dialogue and companies came out of this situation, it means this is a strategic investment. If any agency is working those projects and when this kind of situation happens and they come out of this, they are saying, no, this is not my job. I think this is just a transactional thing which the company is doing out of their CSR. This is the reality. That's why the social entrepreneurs or NGOs have to think, if they want to become a strategic partner with any, especially with the corporates under CSR, they have to think like a corporate. So how they can add value to a corporate. So I'm giving you one more example. So in Jubilant Group, we are doing a lot of things and a lot of businesses also. So there is one company called Jubilant Foodworks. They are into food business. Domino's is a brand and they procure a lot of vegetables. Under CSR, in a Jubilant Foundation is working with farmers, and we started supporting farmers to create orchard. And then slowly the same farmers, so more than now 3,000 farmers, now they have started intercropping, doing intercropping of vegetables, which vegetable, and we are providing them technical and all kind of support so that they should grow the right kind of vegetables so that there should not be any wastage. And we are trying to link them with a company which is buying and supplying to Jubilant Foodworks. That is a strategic investment, because it will not only adding value to in the life of those farmers or the villagers, but at the same time, company is able to establish the traceability for their product. That is the strategy. So the entrepreneurs or NGOs have to understand what is the requirement of any organization or funder. And based on that, if they can partner with that organization, it will be called strategic, where both will get benefit. The entrepreneurs or the organization who are implementing the project, but at the same time, donor or the company or CSR fund who are giving CSR fund, they are also getting benefit. They are getting social license to operate. It means both are getting benefit. That is the strategic investment. Otherwise, it is transactional. So if you are just doling money, people are doing, no doubt, they are also creating a lot of impact, because here I'm, so we will listen from Niti Aayog representative also. So we need to address those UN sustainability goal. I'm not denying that. We have to work on that. But at the same time, we have to take care of the need of the organization or donors. Then only it will be strategic. Strategic doesn't mean that, okay, you work for meeting the SDG goal, but at the same time, if you are not able to sustain your business, it means you are not giving social license to the company, doesn't mean for that organization. So this is my perspective. It may be right or wrong, but this is also a perspective of corporate. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. As direct as always, thank you for sharing your views. Going from Vivek to Urvashi, government is undoubtedly the biggest social impact investor in our country. the prime motive of governance is welfare of people. So, Urvashi, what role do you think the government is playing to encourage and facilitate this trend of funding becoming more strategic? Because we've heard from the experts, the continuum they may be differing on, but one thing is loud and clear that, yes, the trends are changing. So, what role the government is playing or planning to play as we witness this shift? Over to you, Urvashi.
Yeah, so I think, in the government, what we are seeing now is move towards a collective impact model, what we call collective impact. And whether you look at the aspirational districts program of the government, in fact, I think that's one of the biggest examples where you have all the government agencies working, you have CSR, you have various civil society organizations, various foundations, and the whole idea is to improve development indicators in some of India's most backward areas. So there's a common mission, there's a common goal, and there's a broad alignment amongst all stakeholders. But everybody is working in a different sector, everybody is working in a specific domain. And ultimately, the idea is that collectively, we'll be able to achieve far greater impact than we would be able to, if we were funding individual players and we were just implementing individual programs. So I think the government is more and more moving towards these collective impact type of approaches. Even if you see development impact bonds, in education they've been used extensively to improve primary school outcomes. Last year the National Skill Development Corporation launched one of the largest skill bonds to train large numbers of youth, and at least 60% of those being women and girls. And again, you see that a lot of private foundations, global organizations are part of this skill impact bond, which was developed by the National Skill Development Corporation. So I think that is definitely the direction in which things are moving. The government itself is looking at collective impact, as well as trying to put in place certain enabling mechanisms, whether it's the social stock exchange or other such means to sort of channelize funding towards the social sector. But I think the approach definitely is, instead of working in silos or instead of working on just individual programs, thinking of a larger goal, a larger mission, and to see how different stakeholders can contribute along with that. So I think that's the approach that is being taken. And I think it's also very good from the social sector's point of view, because I worked in the social sector for many years. I also worked at the Dell Foundation. So I was sort of on the other side as well. And I think it's really important if the government starts playing this role, because government funding is the most sustainable in some ways. If you have the government, then sustainability becomes much less of an issue. And social, entrepreneurs and NGOs can, play their critical part. So I think it's a positive development, and hopefully we'll see more of it in the days to come.
Thank you, Urvashi. I'm a firm believer that no change in a country like India can happen, or anywhere in the world for that matter, without the support of government. So government definitely plays a vital role in shaping how funding is perceived and how it's utilized. So thank you so much, Urvashi. I go back to Dr. Shelley. Dr. Shelley, we've established that there's some change happening. Maybe a couple of examples of or things that you've witnessed where you've seen social sector organizations make that transformation, and pure implementation organization now becoming a strategic partner with the funder. Would love to hear from you on that.
Yes, of course, Anshu. So my own organization, Every Infant Matters, is focused on preventing malnourishment, malnutrition in children, and minimizing infant mortality. Now, one of our donors, very big donors, long-standing donors, DuPont, with whom we've had a lasting relationship for this project and that project, the typical transactional funding. They approached us and they said that can we work together in the industrial area of Noida, where there is a very big need for your work, but let us do it differently. Like Urvashi has said very clearly, and you have said, and the previous speakers have said, and Vivek has also said that there has to be a common goal. We are working together. Only then can it be considered a strategic shift in funding. So the funding was no longer, we are giving you money and you just buy the ready-to-eat therapeutic foods and give it to the children. It was a holistic approach starting from pregnancy onward. What about anemia in pregnancy? Let us address that. Let us mobilize communities. Let us work with the government, the ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers. Why are teenage girls anemic, leading to malnourished mothers, leading to low birth weight babies? So all this came with a lot of hand-holding on the side of the corporate, not just in decision-making, also in implementation, in financial management, and also in the day-to-day implementation of the project. Because like we've talked of best business practices, once we apply those to the NGO sector, that is where the value lies. And I'm proud to say that that project was highly successful and it really made an impact. And as Vivek has said, that, well, both have to be. The corporate proved that they could benefit their own people, do a lot of welfare work with the help of this organization. And that is what strategic funding is all about.
Thank you. Great point. I'll hold on to the business practices point and, take it to Mr. Singh when I go to him. But before that, Swami, coming back to you, you've dealt with a lot of social sector organizations. For some time, if I ask you to wear the hat of the social sector, how do they see this change? Do they view it positively, negatively? Are they indifferent to it? What are the power dynamics involved as the works or the funding is taking a more strategic turn rather than being transactional? I'm sure it influences the power dynamics between the donor and the donee as well. So your thoughts on that?
So thanks, Anshu. I think it's very rare for someone on a panel to go ahead and directly point out the power dynamics. And I think the power dynamics are very, very important. So either explicitly or implicitly, sometimes stated, sometimes unstated, there is always a certain power dynamic between the between someone who is giving a grant and someone who is getting a grant. So that power dynamic has to be acknowledged. Now, within the context of that power dynamic, what also comes into play is that sometimes what is considered to be strategic funding or what needs to be strategic from a funding perspective is often defined by the person who is giving the grant rather than the grantee itself. So the grantee by default becomes some sort of a implementing agency or a community-based organization or a CSO, right? So the thought process, the ownership of the thought process, ownership of what constitutes a strategic change, who moves the needle, when does the needle move, what kind of impact metrics, monitoring, evaluation frameworks, all of that then becomes a one-way street. And the grantee by default is expected to go ahead and take care of all of those things, which essentially means that there is an administrative layer that you are expecting the grantee to go ahead and fulfill, because it's the person or the organization that's giving the grant that requires that information, right? And that's where a lot of the capacity building itself has not taken place. So when one looks at strategic funding, often enough, the institution or the organization that wants to go ahead and contribute to that strategic funding or wants to really do something strategic at the ground level in terms of moving the needle, reducing infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, providing high quality or increasing the level of high quality, affordable, accessible eye care services, etc. Right? It could be decrease or increase, right? They don't focus enough attention on the capacity building that is required for the organization which is supposed to be implementing. So either the organization's own capacity needs to be increased, which means that there are ancillary functions that need to be developed, or there are going to be organizations that go ahead and take care of that, right? So the capacity building also has a little bit of a, upstream and downstream work that typically strategic funding organizations don't take care. From a transactional funding perspective, it's all programmatic funding. So you're not even, sometimes the transactional funding is so highly programmatic driven that you don't even provide for enough administrative costs to take care of. So the people who are supposed to go ahead and provide the change or take care of the change at the ground level from a transactional funding perspective don't even get paid enough. Now, you then go ahead and create a different kind of a power dynamic without having the intention to create that, but you still end up creating it, right? So keeping the power dynamics in terms of what is transactional funding, what is strategic funding, how are you building the capacity of the organization, what does sustainability mean, right? So all these questions are also very, very critical and needs more forums like these and more workshops for people to go ahead and take ownership.
Great point, Swami. And I think, that capacity building piece resonates a lot. Managing an organization, you see it every day. Moving from being transactional to being strategic requires a completely different skill set, completely different back-end operations. And all of that requires investment. If we are scaling, there are usually a lot of donors interested in investing in scaling that program, but the competencies, skill sets, the capital expenditure required to support that scale is unfortunately missed out. So thanks for raising that extremely important point. Mr. Singh, I come back to you. For you, it all started with a good intention, with all heart. But, fortunately, somewhere, the entrepreneur in you caught up, and you started seeing your initiatives from a business lens on how you could maximize the impact, create more impact, and touch more lives through the dollars you've invested. So please tell us a little bit about that journey and how you're using your business acumen and skills to alter the way you're doing social change.
Okay, again, I'll speak here from my experience, so other people listening can see this is what happened and how we are small steps are making a difference. Couple of things. Being now involved with India, one of the other things that's happened is we have touched the other ecosystem. We have now started a clinic in our village. There was never a doctor in our village. Now we have a full-time doctor and a nurse servicing at least 40 patients every day. And we have now outsourced our estimating services of our company to somebody in Chandigarh. So we have engineers, giving him more employment to engineers in India. So just by us now being part of India, we must have given employment to multiple levels of people. So how does I'm an engineer and we employ quite a few engineers. So we always think in a very process-oriented mind. So the first year the camps were going on in Punjab, we were very report-driven. We wanted to know how many people attended, how many men, how many women, what was the age group, how many needed referrals. So we started to develop data by the end of the year as to what was the attendance, why one day we only had 80 people show up and then the another day 200, or some day only 40 show up. So we started analyzing how we can get the best bang for the dollar, because here we had limited dollars we were giving to implement the program. So let's say the eyeglasses cost the whole is 500 rupees an eyeglass. We want to see, as a business owner, you always are looking at the bottom line, and we wanted to see how we can do this process for 400 rupees an eyeglass. So we started analyzing all the processes. So how do we advertise once we are going into a village? We found that just a simple thing, that if it was not planned properly, if a village was not notified that a camp was going to be held, at least 4 or 5 days in advance, the attendance was very poor. So now you have a fixed cost of a team going to the village, and only 60-80 people show up every day. Whereas we have a capacity of one team to manage 200 people. We could manage 200 screenings a day. But if you don't do it properly, then you only get 60 people. So you are wasting resources. So we started analyzing all that. And just by doing that for the next year, we had a whole plan laid out. We mapped the whole Punjab by district, where analyzing the population of each village, which are the villages we can strategically hold the camps in. And then we started analyzing each process. What's the process? Where can we save people? Where can we hire somebody locally to save the cost? So to me, I always tell Vision Spring, we are not just a donor. We are not saying, hey, here's the money, go do it. We are very actively involved in the process of how we can do it for the best value. So I think because we have taken that proactive role of being involved in it and bringing our engineering and business knowledge to this program, I think we are doing, now that we see, we are doing much better for the same money used. We are giving more eyeglasses out. So I think it's a journey which we will, it doesn't stop. Like a process improvement is something you continue working on. So we have a team from our back office which goes there twice a month to analyze, and we get a feedback of how the improvements are taking place. So it's been all positive. It's just been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward for many more years of working with Vision Spring and Punjab to help the society there.
Thank you, sir. And I think, important points raised, and, I can speak on the behalf of social organizations, is sometimes what happens is when the funder is also participating in building that program, social organizations sometimes get defensive about it. And that's something that we all need to change, because we need to learn from each other. And that's what co-creation is all about. If there's any, all of us are working to create the maximum impact that we can. And if new things are being brought in, we cannot have that arrogance that we know our work. Because if we had known our work, all of us, we would have by now solved the problem, and we would have not been required to be in existence. So humility on behalf of the social organizations is also extremely important. With that, I will take the question to Vivek. Vivek, as you see this change happening, do you think, you touched upon it a little bit, I'll probe a little more. Do you think are social organizations ready to be strategic partners? What kind of changes that you're seeing? How are you supporting them to make this transition? Also, there's another question in this. As we look at being more strategic, there is also a requirement to be agnostic to sector. It's important that we look at the problem from a 360-degree viewpoint and not say this is this sector, this is that sector. I'll give you an example. With Vision Spring, we work eye care for commercial drivers. It's an eye care, it's a health intervention, but it's also a road safety intervention. So we very closely work with road safety partners, the ministry, etc., to ensure that we are maximizing the impact. So what are your viewpoints on both the issues? One about equipping the social organizations in making this transition, and then second being sector agnostic.
I think in the beginning, in fact, when this discussion started, Swaminathan has very well explained that we need to strengthen the capacity of the organization who are implementing the projects, or because all organizations are not big and they are not having such capacity to do everything. So that capacity building is important. And if we really want to do a strategic partnership for long-term association with that organization and make them sustainable, then certainly investing in their capacity building is very much important. But recently, so I'm seeing the change also, especially among social entrepreneurs and NGOs. So now people have started thinking on becoming self-sustainable or do a strategic project which can give them sustenance and their project sustainable also. That is the beauty. Now many organizations have converted into hybrid mode. So for profit and not profit, both going parallel to each other. So that through one, if any organization wants to support only not-for-profit, as in CSR, they can only provide support to not-for-profit. But at the same time, to make it self-sustainable, they are also creating for-profit organizations. So like if we are, if any organization supporting to artisans, so the training of artisans, training of and developing that enterprise is part of, is a not-for-profit part, but at the same time, creating marketplace for those product, it is a for-profit thing. And without that, it cannot sustain. So both are required. So that's why now things are changing and people are taking it positive, and especially organizations are taking it positive, and we are seeing that change. As I explained earlier, so you cannot create, especially for the CSR and or business houses, you cannot create island of prosperity. So that's why you have to work with the community and build the community organization also along with you, because you are growing, but if your surrounding is not growing, then certainly you will have threat from the surrounding, your stakeholder. So it's better to build their capacity either through forming SHG or FPO or youth group or so any kind of organization, and make them and do institutional investment in them. That is the strategic investment. So you, on one side, you are building their capacity, their association capacity building, and then make them sustainable. So that both will get benefit. So that is the change happening, and we are also into this. And many times you can't do work everywhere, but need is everywhere. So in that case, strategic partnership is better. Sometimes you are just doing partnership for technical assistance. So everything you cannot know, or the organization which is implementing the project, they can't know everything. So in that case, getting technical support from any agency is important. So just like Tajinder ji explained, like a vision spring is example. Like if we want to make our organization sustainable, so it's not only the community, but our own staff, our own employee, our own drivers, they are also important. So health check and their healthcare is important. So we are working in that healthcare domain. But at the same time, eye care is also important. So recently, in fact, we've seen that impact. So when we did this eye screening, lot of people came. So we identified with cataract, and they so we referred them for cataract operation in government hospitals under the blindness eradication program. That is the beauty. So it's not necessary that you are doing one-to-one just a project. You are taking their help, organization help, technical help, integrating in your project, and then creating impact. So that is also happening. And I think this is the future. Collaboration is the future. If you are collaborating, getting knowledge, skill, experience with other organizations, certainly you will grow and you can create sustainable impact also.
Great. Thanks, Vivek. Collaboration is the future. I completely agree with that. Coming to Urvashi, talking about sustainability of programs, what can government do more to make sure that the funding for social impact is sustainable And also, could you talk a little bit about the social stock exchanges? What's the aim of the government through that? Is sustainability a focus with that? What's the government trying to achieve? I'm sure a lot of people on this call today would like to know about what really is the goal of the government through the social stock exchanges. So over to you.
Yeah, so I think sustainability is a very important aspect, and I think that's where the more we have these collective impact approaches that I was talking about, where there isn't just one stakeholder that you are dependent on, either for funding or for actual implementation. That is where efforts are likely to be most sustainable, where you have a government agency, and they are in it for the long term, like we see in the aspirational districts program, that there's an understanding in the government that the transformation is not going to happen overnight. So you have to be in it for at least a period of a few years, if not more. And so I think that immediately brings in that sustainability element, where that the government is going to be funding that for a foreseeable period of time. At the same time, there are other stakeholders involved, both from the funding side as well as on the implementation side. There's different stakeholders. There isn't over dependence on any one stakeholder, either funder or implementer. So I think that thought process of sustainability is very much there. There's also a focus on transparent data and transparent measurement of outcomes, and I think that is also a very important dimension when we talk of strategic funding, because historically, if you see, the governments have always been focused on outlays. Governments have always been for a program. But increasingly in the government also, we are seeing an emphasis on outcomes, and we are seeing an emphasis on measuring data, and also monitoring in the real time, rather than waiting for years to, tell you whether a program was successful or not. Actually measuring outcomes on a real-time basis, like is happening in the aspirational districts program through a real-time dashboard. So I think that is also a very important facet of this whole shift towards strategic funding, because unless you have the results and unless you can transparently articulate your results, it's very difficult to sort of engage with funders or talk about funding. So I think that is another sort of enabling mechanism that the government is trying to put in place. And I think the social stock exchanges, again, the idea is to bring a lot of transparency in the fund flow that happens in this sector. Of course, the objective is to increase funding to this sector, but to do it in a very transparent manner, and to do it at scale. I think that is another big idea here, because otherwise everybody is individually trying to do their fundraising efforts, but here through this stock exchange, the idea is that in one place you can have all these organizations, whatever their needs are, listed. And so therefore you can do fundraising much more systematically at scale, and also there is transparency and accountability. So I think all of those are intentions of the government behind such an initiative, and I think that is the direction that we will see, even when it comes to strategic funding. Transparency, data, accountability, outcomes focus. I think those are some of the key words, apart from sustainability, of course.
Thank you, Rishi. Very clear. I think much required accountability and transparency in the sector. So I'm sure that these initiatives would be extremely helpful and bring in more funding. And there are people on the edge because the perception of the sector, at least a part of the sector at times, is not very positive. So I'm sure that these initiatives would help in changing that perception and bring in more social impact funding in the different cause areas. Thank you, Urvashi. As a segue to the question and answers, I would now request Uni Krishnan, who heads CSR for Great Eastern Shipping, to share his thoughts on, how can these transactional partnerships evolve into the more strategic ones, and what are some of the challenges and drivers that he sees as he goes about managing CSR for a large organization. Uni, if I may request you to share your views.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anshu. Thanks a lot. I think I'll start with a real example. Maybe when I was with my previous organization, GMR Group, we developed a collaborative project in which almost all the stakeholders were present. So GMR had fantastic skill training centers across many cities in the country, and we wanted good quality market relevant training to happen, with the ultimate idea that the youth who come there for training get good jobs. So then for that we approached different companies. So one particular example is Volvo construction equipment team, and it took about 1 year from the beginning touch point to actually we getting into a contest. Unfortunately, we couldn't convince the marketing team which were handling CSR at that time from Volvo what could be the benefit of they spending their time and energy in helping us develop a training course around equipment, this construction equipment operators course. So I still remember in one of the visits which I made to Volvo office, they had put in a whiteboard, they had put their target, of selling this many equipment in that month, and it is all very high end, and it's difficult to sell because there are many other companies who sell at a cheaper rate. I mean, it's just like how you will opt for a Volvo car versus many other maybe a Maruti or a Hyundai available in the market. Then suddenly, it struck me, and I asked that gentleman, if you tell your potential customers that we are not just selling you high-end equipment, but we are also giving you trained staff who can utilize this equipment to the maximum level and give you good returns on your investment. That was a trigger point for the Volvo team to think about this investment as something strategic. And from there, I'm very happy to say that that partnership program is going on, that training program is going on in multiple cities for the last 7 years or so. So then another side of that collaboration was that GMR, while we had a good skilling center and we got a fantastic partner in Volvo, still the biggest challenge was to get youth, deserving youth to come and take the training. So then what we did is that we connected with about 30 NGOs across cities and gave a very simple communication that we have got this facility and we are offering it free of cost, because GMR will take care of the training cost and Volvo will take care of the training content quality and potential placement. So if you can mobilize youth from your areas and send them here, it will be great. And that happened. So NGOs started mobilizing youth and sending to the center. And then the government role came in, because government at that time was really promoting skilling, and many of these students got scholarship and funding assistance. So it became, if you look at it, corporate partners, CSR partners, NGOs, government, and ultimately the beneficiaries, the youth who are looking for some skill and good job opportunities, they all got benefited. So now, by giving this example, I wanted to bring in one perspective to this question which you raised. I think it might be debatable whether we can call any particular partnership transactional or transformative or strategic. But I think the crux of it is that all of us as human beings, we get into a partnership only when we see we can add value to our own activities, our own life, or to others' life, right? And if that principle is taken into consideration, then I would say that we can call any partnership a strategic partnership, a sustainable partnership, where all the players are getting more or less good share of value add sense, and the only way we can approach it, I mean, if I'm a participant representing the social sector in this event, then that final question will be that, okay, all these theories are good, but what can I do? I think the only answer to that will be that whenever you approach anyone, whether it is for funding or partnership, non-funding partnership, or for any matter, integrity matters. I think with what intent you connect with a person. So it could be that probably the funding or the partnership opportunity didn't work out in the first meeting, but if you have left that impression that I really meant business and I really wanted to do this, then if not today, sometime later, that partnership is going to happen. Or if not, the person you met, maybe from the CSR or the corporate side, they are going to talk about you. They are going to talk to 100 people, their friends and other sector leaders, that I came across this fantastic organization or person, but we couldn't help because we didn't have funds or extra reasons, but why can't you just look at supporting? So that is a way it will happen. So I feel if we can keep integrity in our approach, then forget about transactional or strategic, it will end up in good results. And two more points I wanted to, one more point I wanted to bring in is that there is always this question about business interest or the business strategy versus CSR strategy. I feel the best way for representing the corporate side, I can say that a CSR NGO collaboration will not become strategic or sustainable unless there is a clear sense of value. And again, I'm coming to the same point, which many people, earlier panelists mentioned here also. But what is critical for the business here is to reflect and define whether I am getting into this social sector partnership for the business interest or to help to support the beneficiaries who might get the benefit out of this partnership. So I think as long as a business is able to take a stand that, okay, I understand that the business might benefit, but then my first priority is to support the beneficiaries, then that partnership will stay sustainable. Otherwise, I think it will become transactional. And believe me, I mean, we have done a lot of projects, power projects and all, where social licensing and all those things were relevant from, and I can tell you convincingly that the population, especially in India, they can easily read you. Whether you represent corporate or social sector, people are able to clearly read what your intent and again the same point of integrity. Yeah, and
yeah, Uneet, thank you so much. I would need to just move on because of shortage of time. We have a lot of questions,
right.
So take a couple of them. But I think the message is loud and clear. Integrity is important. Once you come in with the right intention, integrity, and build credibility over a period of time, funding will follow.
Yep.
So with that, I would go to Malvika. Malvika, if and very briefly, because we're almost out of time, any innovative solution or operational model that you have seen in your work with Sagana and otherwise, you're doing a lot of consulting, that you feel has enhanced impact and sustainability. Maybe briefly, if you could share that with us.
Yeah, maybe I could actually just share an example from my previous firm when I was working with Satva, and we were consulting a financial services company. They had an MFI business, and they were providing loans in rural areas, joint liability loans, and they wanted to set up their CSR program, and they wanted to design it around this rural business that they had. And so together we kind of came up with this concept of identifying community leaders, women in the community who could drive digital financial inclusion and digital financial literacy within those villages. And there was a very, very long-term goal that eventually in some of these villages and regions, especially those which were marked red by the MFI team in terms of not having the greatest collection of loans, to in the long run perhaps improve even their loan recovery on the business side. So this was so while the outcomes from the CSR were very clear, to drive digital financial literacy, to empower the women community leaders, to empower the larger community, we saw this very interesting cohesion even with the business side. And I think this resonates well with a lot of points that were brought up by Swami, by Vivek, by Uni Krishnan, which is for both organizations like the funder and the implementing organization to really be able to speak each other's languages. So implementing organizations to be open to the business outcomes, businesses to be understanding of where the implementing organizations are, make space for funding to build their capacities. I think when there's that kind of synergy, then naturally these partnerships tend to move in the direction of being strategic, without dwelling too much on what the difference is between strategic and transactional. And I think those kind of partnerships definitely drive impact, because the business is naturally interested when the implementing organization is seeing it from their perspective as well. So I think there's a good give and take in those situations.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thanks for sharing your views. I'll move on to Deep Jyoti. Deep Jyoti, this self-fulfilling loop, most businesses have interest in areas which are industrialized, right? So a lot of CSR funding goes in there. And a lot of areas which are not so business savvy, but need the funding the most, get ignored. So how do we align funding to geographies that need the most? Deep Jyoti, are you there? Okay.
I think Deep Jyoti is not there, but I can feel your So views like Northeast. So there are no industries. Then CSR fund is not there. Government funding is there, but it's not sufficing the requirements. So how to fund those areas? But again, I'm telling you, entrepreneurship is the only solution, and I'm seeing that impact. So there are many entrepreneurs. I'm seeing even women entrepreneurs are doing very good job in Manipur, then Arunachal Pradesh, even in Nagaland. There are few organizations who are working on this entrepreneurial model. Then the best part is, so again, you have to make the organization sustainable. That is the crux. If you are not sustainable, then you cannot create impact. And I'm seeing them, they are leveraging the nature over there and developing product and services out of that, and then creating impact. So to make them sustainable, they are leveraging the local ecosystem and then doing activities. So generating fund out of those enterprises and then creating impact. So nobody will come from outside to support you. Somebody from inside has to come out and think for the society and bring support or technical support and other support from outside and create impact. Nobody will come from outside. So if we have to develop our country, we have to develop our own CSOs and in this country. Nobody will come from others. So they can support us, technical support they can provide us, but ultimately we have to work for our society, our country. So that is the solution. Sure. Even for those areas, and sure. I'm seeing those things.
Okay, great. I completely agree with you. It starts with that entrepreneurial ability. So let's go to the questions now. For want of time, probably I'll take a couple. And what I'm trying to do is club some of the questions and create, take the common threads and create a couple of questions. There are a few requests also. All those who have made requests, we will make sure that your requests reach the speakers and you can directly then take it forward with them. But coming to the questions, I think the two big questions are, that creating a fund where, the capabilities for this transition to more being more strategic, how do we create that fund? How do we create investment in that, building that strategic capabilities? And whose job is that? Is it the government's job? Is it the corporate's job? Or the social entrepreneurs are going to do it themselves? Maybe I'll hand it over to Swami. Swami, being the most neutral, perspective in the room, whose job is it to, ensure that there is enough funding for building capabilities as we move on this journey to a strategic transformation?
Yeah, I think that's a very tough question, Anshu.
Okay, I think we have lost Swami. So,
but I think
yeah,
there
okay. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry,
sorry,
we just lost you.
I think we lost you. I was just telling Anshu that it's a tough question, and what I was coming down to are a couple of things that we, as people who are interested in social change, and that's the reason why we are all connected to whatever we are doing, right? It could be as a social entrepreneur, it could be, as Tejinder said, passion. It's, as Vivek says, that it has to make a business case and a business model. Malvika gave this entire fantastic example of MFI and digital public goods and digital inclusion. So everyone's, and Urvashi has talked about monitoring and evaluation and collective impact. End of the day, it's our intent. We want to go ahead and translate our intent into action. And it is that translation, it's almost like we need to create a translation engine. Funding in itself, from where I sit, I don't see that as a problem. The funding is there. The question eventually comes down to a level 2, level 3 kind of a question. How are you going to define impact? Can we have when we talk about a collective impact or a co-impact, then essentially you are saying that all societal problems, big complex societal problems, are multidimensional, which essentially means that you need to have multiple stakeholders, which also means that all these multiple stakeholders, some of them may be connected to one impact, one set of outcomes, one set of outputs. Some of them may have the capability to go ahead and connect themselves to multiple outputs and multiple outcomes. But there has to be an organization or a certain kind of a system or a consortium that's able to go ahead and put together and stack these different stakeholders in such a way that each one's responsible for a set of outputs and outcomes, because put together is what is called as collective impact or co-impact. What also then means that the funding itself needs to be connected to a certain set of outcome payee models. Who's responsible for what outcome, right? And that is where I think a lot of the thought process itself needs to be put into, which essentially the long and short of it, the short point that I'm making is that you need to have a gestation fund to actually think of these questions and have that designed in a way where you're able to then move towards a consortium. Because in a business model or in a business case, the revenue and the profit motive and the market segmentation automatically gives a certain amount of momentum and speed to what you want to achieve. So you don't really need too much of a gestation fund. But here, some of the key thought processes itself need to be evolved. So there needs to be a gestation fund which is able to take into account the fact that this is a gestation fund for setting up a consortium. And then you go ahead and do things. So it's a little slightly different kind of a financing model, and you need to sort of bring in some sort of a patient capital to that.
Thank you, Swami. Great points. Last question, and Vivek, I would request you to keep it short. And I'm putting you in the spot here. There are lots of questions on sustainability, hybrid models, how to scale up. And you rightly said, it requires entrepreneurial ability, and that's where the social entrepreneurships come into play. There's mention of Samaj, Sarkar, Bazar. Now, while Samaj and Sarkar, government and society, our systems and our institutions are pretty supportive about, the moment it comes to Bazar, Bazar is perceived negatively, by the government. right? And if not, that's changing, that's dramatically changing, but still it's not perceived the way it should. And there are no laws really to support entrepreneurial ability amongst social organizations. They're very fuzzy laws. So what do you have to say about that? And please, I know it's a very interesting question, but want of time, please keep it short.
So I will say to all the impact members who are joining this this discussion, please visit to our website jubilantbhartiyafoundation.com. Go to the social entrepreneurship section, where more than, in fact, 100 entrepreneurs details are there who were finalists of our Social Entrepreneur of the Year award. You can go to their website. I'm not saying you go to our website and you read our thing. You go to their website, see the model, how they are working. Goonj, purely charitable work, but they are sustainable. You can see their model, how they have become sustainable. You can see a model of Hak Darshak, who are working for to ensure eligibility. They are sustainable. They are 100% business, but how they have become a business. So Bazaar is not a bad thing. Now everybody is realizing without Bazaar, you cannot sustain. So you have to create Bazaar of everything, product and services. So if you are serving to the society, so no doubt your services will be purchased by somebody else. So don't worry for that. You go to our website. If any further clarification required, we can discuss online, offline, anyway. Satwa is an organization. You can contact them. They are also working in the same manner. So they are having huge list of such social entrepreneurs. So I think solutions are there in the society, but we have to open our eyes, open our mind, see them and learn from them. Certainly there will be solutions. So we need not require to do experiment further. There are examples in the society.
Thank you, Vivek. And it's really heartening to see from the speakers that there is the support of Bazaar also, because that's what we really need if we have to be strategic in the long term, apart from the funding or the seed capital that Mr. Singh talked about as well. We need to find ways to raise money and to be innovative and be efficient. And that's where we can make the philanthropic funding or CSR funding count for more, and touch more and more people, which is really the aim that we have set out and made our organizations with. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. All the speakers, wonderful views, diverse perspectives. Great to have a mix like we had today. The experts who came in.
So just one line, because it's a very interesting line which is coming in my mind.
Sure.
So यस बाजार में बिकती है, खरीदने वाले चाहिए. जैसे विजन स्प्रिंग यस बनाती है, एक आदमी को चश्मे देकर, एक दृष्टि देकर. ऐसे हजारों लोग हैं तजिंदर जी सिंह जैसे जो उस यस को खरीदते हैं. ही इज नॉट डूइंग चैरिटी, ही इज परचेजिंग दैट यस. सो वो भी बाजार है, क्योंकि उनको भी चाहिए. ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं जिनको समाज के लिए कुछ करने की इच्छा है, लेकिन उनको भी ऐसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन चाहिए जो वो बाजार दे सके. मुझे लगता है कि बाजार इज आल्सो द सॉल्यूशन. सो थैंक यू. Now you can conclude.
And so with that, Bazaar on a positive note, which is the need of the hour, thank again all the speakers, all the attendees, all the experts, all those who asked questions, and we'll also be replying to your questions on YouTube, so you can get some of your answers there, and we'll connect you definitely with all those you want to get connected with your specific queries. Also, a big thanks to Gaurav from ISTM, Sayukta, Indrani, and the Catalyst 2030 team for bringing us all together. I had great fun moderating it. It was great learning for me as well. And I hope it was for all of you as well. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.